gorgeous. A room full of such beautiful faces. It really is special. And I just look at all of you and, yeah, powerful people, powerful influences, and who can really, really make a difference in the lives of our youth. And together we really, really can make a powerful, amazing team. So thank you, all of you, for being here today. If you can just take a small moment to turn to the person next to you and say thank you for being here today. Thank you. I had a brief chat with one of the teachers in the room here just before we started about his teaching, and what he said to me was, it's here, and he held his heart. And I think that's so true, and that's why all of you are here today, because it's there and it's right in your heart. Okay, so yes, Robin gave you a brief outline about me, and here today I'm representing an organization called Life Talk. Some of you may have already heard of Life Talk, some of you not. Life Talk is a non-profit organization, and our main purpose is about educating young people to make wise choices in their lives, and to empower them to be able to have the tools and face the challenges that they have as they grow up. Our mission is to empower all of these young people, and also that they can, for the reason that they can lead happy, fulfilling lives and reach their full potential and be able to contribute to society in a very positive and influential way. I'm not very good with the mic, so just tell me if I stray away from it. You can't hear me at the back there. Also, we aim to equip parents for proactive parenting, and through awareness and positive parenting to attempt to help families to thrive. And then finally, we also work with educators to help them to build strong foundations, the platform from which we can propel our young people and gear them for success into the future. So I think for a lot of people, success means different things. For us, success is about well-balanced young people who are happy, young people who are positive, young people who are resilient, and I think that's a big one. This is not an easy world that we live in, and it's paramount that we have that resilience to be able to cope. Young people who are self-assured. Self-esteem is such an important thing, and it's the foundation of success on so many levels. Grateful and kind and empathic youth is what we want. That means success for us too. And young people who are able to speak up for themselves, who are able to stand up for themselves, and also stand up for others in need when they see the need. We also want to create, or we see success as young people who are positive catalysts, young people who can help make this world a better place, and who can become the very best versions of who they can possibly be. The best me I can be is how we put it. Okay, so if we can move to the next slide, thank you. Can everybody see the slides at the back? Are they clear enough in the light? Okay. So, and the next one. I just want to open up for a moment and just get a little bit of feedback from some of you in the group today. What are you seeing in your school environments or the environments in which you're working? Are you seeing bullying? What kind of bullying are you seeing? How prevalent is it? Is there anyone who would like to give us a little bit of an idea of what you're seeing, what you're experiencing?
My name is Melvin. I'm from Cavendish Primary School. It's a school in the south. And it's a primary school. And I'm also representing with me the school by supporting my team that I came with this afternoon.
Awesome.
And what we are seeing is, it looks like it's the norm. For children just to bully one another. I've got so many cases that comes to the office, and we start to realize that children don't play in a playful way anymore. It's so many bullying cases that's going on that it looks like it's the norm. So I think that's the reason why we have come this afternoon, so that we can also go beyond policy and the legislation that we've got to see how we can deal with this problem at school.
Absolutely. Okay, so for you, it's like bullying is a norm, which is very much not what we want. Thank you, Mervyn. Anybody else? Yes, at the back there.
My name is Tasneem Mia. I'm from Ironwood Primary School. I'm the deputy principal there, and I come with my team as well. I think as a foundation phase deputy principal, I see it very common now in terms of they don't see the difference between playing rugby and bullying. It's very much overlapping into each other, and the excuse is I was just playing. But the effect of it is very much moving towards the violence of bullying and the trauma of bullying. And even at a grade R level, right up to grade 3, which we deal with, it's becoming so common that even helping them out to realize what they're doing, we're doing it so often that it's becoming, like the gentleman said, very, very much a part of school right now.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, are you, in a nutshell, saying that they don't really understand what bullying is? Or there's no...
I understand the textbook idea of what bullying is.
Yes.
But the behavior points to that in terms of not just emotional, but very physical.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's blurred completely across.
Yeah. So there's a fine line, but there's kind of a difficulty in distinguishing between what physical play is okay and when it's past the line, kind of thing.
Emotionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I find is that bullying became faceless. So children are doing it on social media, and they don't even know, who is sending or starting to send the message. Sorry, and it just evolves all the time.
Yeah, very, very valid point. Thank you for bringing that up, and I will discuss a little bit more about that later on, but absolutely, cyberbullying. And in fact, the old school type of bullying, where before cell phones and iPads and all that kind of thing, was very much more physical and very much more seen. So, yeah, very valid point. The cyberbullying, unfortunately, is rampant, and I think has probably more devastating effects than the old style bullying. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Gentlemen, I'm Nompumelelo Mkonza from OR Tambo Primary School. I want to come up with a different view from a township school. From OR Tambo in Tembisa. You see, with us bullying, I think it's a social problem. It comes from different homes. They come with different behaviors from their homes, from their backgrounds. So they take it that it's a lifestyle, it's normal for them to bully each other. So to us, we are looking at a social issue, a social problem, more than what is happening at school level. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, absolutely. It's a much broader issue than simply just bullying that's happening at school. It's, I saw a quote once that said, I'm sure you've all heard the monkey see, monkey do kind of thing, but children learn not so much about what we teach them. Children learn more from watching us and what we do. So, yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Anyone else would like to share? Yes, at the back there, Annalise.
I have found as well that children have, as carrying on from what you said, children have forgotten or they don't know how to socially interact with each other. What is acceptable and what is antisocial. And that they, what is right and what is wrong. And I'm finding that from home that it's as if it's not being corrected and that it's the norm and we can behave how we want to. And that it's acceptable then to bring it into the school environment and behave like that. And it's not acceptable. It's antisocial behavior that needs to be corrected.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Just a couple of other things here. What would you say in terms of what you're seeing? Yeah, thank you. Do you think it's on the increase? Is that a unanimous yes? Yeah? Okay. And are the children speaking out? Are the victims talking to you? Are children coming forward and sharing with you what's happening and how they're feeling? Some yes, some no? Yeah, okay. Okay. And what about standing up for others? Are the children coming to you and saying what's happening when they are witnesses to the things that are going on? Okay, again, some yes and some no. Yeah. Okay, all right, yes.
May I say something?
Yes.
After everybody. The speaking up part, it is not them speaking up on bullying per se, it's rather them speaking up on the deed done if they felt that it is not appropriate. But sometimes you find that the speaker is also a bully himself. And because at this particular point he could not use his strength over this particular child, then he comes to speak out. By the way, I'm Sam Klapo from Rosebank Union.
Thank you for that. Yes, and I think certainly sometimes it's the victims that come and speak up. Sometimes it's the bullies that come and speak up. And we'll discuss it a little bit in a bit more detail later. But actually, they are in certain ways mirrors of each other. And I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit later on. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay. So, yeah. You can go to the next one. Okay, so, and you can put the rest. Thank you. Okay, so as educators, obviously you all have a platform from which you can make a very big difference and have a very big influence. So your role as educators is obviously vital in helping this move forward and finding solutions. So, you know, the discussions that have just ensued all talk of the experience that you all have, and it's first-hand experiences, and also the challenges that the youth are facing, and also us as educators are facing in terms of wanting to and trying to help them. So I think, yeah, we're helping to shape these future generations, and we're seeing all these challenges that are happening and that they are faced with. I think the most important thing here is that if we look at educators and we look at parents, you guys are the ones who are spending the most time with the children. You're spending a lot more time with them than their parents actually are. And that's why you can make such a huge difference. So the first thing to consider is we have to be really alert, and we have to make a conscious effort to observe what's happening. I know this is not always easy. I know some of you have classes of 60 kids at some stage. And it's not always an easy thing to do, but I think the better we get to know those children, the more we understand who they are, and the easier it is for us to see when there are noticeable changes in their behavior. And they could be emotional changes, they could be social changes, they could be physiological changes, but it's to be alert and aware and notice any of those changes. And wherever possible, to take as early action. It must be nipped in the bud absolutely immediately. And they need to understand what is acceptable and what is not. And it might sound easy, but it's not an overnight fix, and it's a consistency that needs to happen in terms of campaigns and chatting to the children and finding out and maybe bouncing it off them as well. Do you think this is okay? Why is this not okay? Do you think this is okay? Why not? All that kind of thing. So early action is paramount. It needs to be nipped in the bud as soon as it's seen or observed, and it has to be consistent, because if some behavior is okay sometimes and not other times, that also can create a problem. So early action and the consistency is very important. And also in terms of support, most schools have a guidance counselor or a go-to person for children who are experiencing difficulties and want to speak out or chat about it. And it's really, really important that the children know who that person is. Generally there could be more than one person, and that they know that there is someone that they can trust, that they can go and share these experiences with confidentially, very important, and that these discussions are had in a safe, confidential space, that the children don't feel like it's going to be shared or we feel vulnerable in that respect. Obviously showing care and empathy through all of this is vital, and sometimes it's better to listen than try and give too much advice, because children just want to be heard. Not only children, adults too, all of us. As human beings, one of our greatest needs is just to feel heard and to feel understood. So sometimes they may come to you and perhaps there's no immediate solution, but just the fact that they can speak from their heart and explain how they're feeling and their experience goes a long way to creating that rapport and that relationship where they will feel they can open up in the future as well, and perhaps even more. So yeah, so through these simple actions and through your leadership, our youth learn that adults are there for them. And they learn who they can go and speak to and who they feel comfortable and who they trust enough in that safe environment to help them. So the value that you add is immeasurable. Okay, so I'm going to share with you can change the next slide, it looks like a very strange slide up there, I know. But I'm going to share with you a little demonstration. Can I have a volunteer, please? Anybody? Just one person. Don't all shout at once. Thank you so much. I'm just going to share with you, you can hold that for the moment, I'll tell you what you need to do. A little metaphor that I do with the children when I work with, especially the younger children. And yeah, it usually has quite a profound impact. So, what's your first name? Sam. So Sam has a piece of paper here. You can turn it around so everybody can see it. I don't know if you can see from the back. I've just done a very simple stick man on here. When I do it with the children, I do it on a big piece of flip chart paper, and I draw quite a nice, colourful child on the paper. And I give him a name or her a name. It just depends on what context I'm in. And I ask the children, well, I tell the children a story about this child. So let's say this child's name is Stanley, for example. And I tell them the story, and I'm just going to put it in a nutshell for you. It's a lot longer when I do it with the kids. But basically, Stanley's a happy boy, and his dad gets a new job and has to move to a new job, so they have to move house, so Stanley has to move schools. And he lands up in a school. He lands up in a school where the children are very, very mean to him. So coming from a place where he was really happy, now going to a place where he's being bullied and everyone's being mean had a real severe impact on Stanley. So what I do with the kids is I say to them, what kinds of mean things do you think the children said and did to Stanley? And wow, you must see how the hands go up. And it's just astounding, because it just goes to prove that this is what they see all the time, every day. The hands fly up and the examples fly out of their mouths from this big. Anyway, so as the group is telling me all these things, I get a volunteer, like I have Sam here, one of the kids in the class, and as the comments are coming out, the two kids who I have as volunteers, two because it'll be a bigger page, they start crumpling the page like this. Okay, so remember, this is Stanley. This is not a piece. No, this is Stanley. This is Sam. This is Stanley. Okay, so once we've had a whole lot of comments, and now the paper's really tied up like a ball like that, and then they kick it around and they jump on it and they stand on it, and it starts off a bit funny, and they do have a laugh because now it's a game, and anyway, then what I do is I say, okay, well, all those children who were being so mean to Stanley actually started feeling bad because they realized he was a really nice guy, and so they felt bad. So what did they do?
Sorry.
They said sorry, and then they started being really nice to Stanley, and they started doing and saying nice things to Stanley. So now you're going to uncrumple that slowly, and make it flat again. Okay? So, and then I asked them to share with me what kinds of nice things they did and said. And then the volunteers, as all the nice things are coming out, they're uncrumpling the paper and they're spreading it out, and they're trying to make it nice and flat again. And then, once we've got it nice and flat again, thank you, Sam, I hold it up for them again. And I say to them, okay, here's Stanley. Stanley's back. Does he look the same as he did before? Some of them say yes, and some of them say no, typically, okay? And then we say, well, maybe he does look similar to what he looked before, but what's the fundamental difference? What's the fundamental difference? It's wrinkled, okay? It's all wrinkled. And then I say to the children, you know what? These wrinkles represent the scars that Stanley now has on his heart. And suddenly their faces change. From this funny activity where everything, suddenly their faces change, and you can see it in their eyes. And it's like these scars that are on Stanley they could go away, but sometimes they take a very long time to go away. And sometimes they never go away. Thank you, Sam. Okay, so just as a lovely metaphor that I just liked to share with you, that I really find does have quite a powerful impact. And they think about it in a different way. It's one thing to say, don't say nasty things because it hurts that person. It's another thing to put it in a story like that, which is quite graphic. I think it reaches them on a different level. So, yeah. Okay. So, if I may ask, did we lose the... Okay. There we go. Thank you. Okay, does anybody have a definition for me? How would you describe what is bullying? Anybody have a definition that they'd like to share? It doesn't have to be perfect, whatever comes to mind. How would you describe bullying? Yes?
I think taking advantage of someone.
Taking advantage?
Exerting your power over someone else.
Exerting power over another?
Creating pain on an ongoing, repetitive ongoing.
Creating pain on an ongoing basis? Yes? Any other ideas? Yes?
Making someone's life miserable.
Making someone's life miserable? Yes?
Constant seeking and damaging of character.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit? Just
Constant seeking and damaging of character.
constant damaging of character. Constant damaging of character? Yeah, okay. All of those things most definitely fit into what bullying is. So you've touched on most of the important issues as that's come out now. And I think the main thing is what we need to realize, what we need to communicate to our youth is that bullying and conflict are two different things. They're not the same. So, conflict is a common part of our lives. It's a very necessary part of our lives. It's important in terms of learning how to get along with other people, how to have an argument in the nicest possible way, and all those life skills that come with it. If we think of sibling rivalry, we think of arguments we have with our spouses or our girlfriends or our friends, or even internal conflict within ourselves. So conflict is definitely very normal and an important part. So we either negotiate a win-win, hopefully, in some conflict situations, or we have to accommodate and we learn to live with certain things. Bullying, however, is not about normal conflict. Bullying goes a lot further than that. And as you mentioned over there, it's about an imbalance of power, right, between an aggressive or abusive child and the more passive child. Okay, so I don't think you can see from the back there, the purple box. Can you see? Not really. So just to go through a couple of things here, and you might want to take some notes down about this purple box I'm reading out to you now, because I think when it comes to explaining things, they're quite helpful in helping a child or a young adult understand the difference. So, normal conflict versus bullying. If we look at conflict, we're looking at equal power. Bullying, we're looking at an imbalance of power. Okay? Normal conflict happens occasionally, hopefully. Bullying happens repeatedly. So as you mentioned earlier, it's that ongoing repetition, okay? Repeatedly. Conflict happens usually by accident, okay? Bullying happens on purpose. It's a very deliberate thing. Now I find, especially with the younger children, I need to actually explain to them what is the difference between something that happens by accident and something that happens on purpose. Obviously, as they get a bit older, they do understand that more. Normal conflict, usually everyone is upset. When it comes to bullying, only the target lands up being upset, most of the time. Normal conflict is not seeking of power or attention, but bullying is seeking power and control and dominance. Okay? Normal conflict, generally, we feel bad about what happened. Bullying, usually the bully doesn't feel bad for what's happened. And in normal conflict, there's usually an effort, or at least a wanting to put in an effort to, go back a step, sorry, wanting to put in an effort to solve the problem. When it comes to bullying, the bully, usually from the bully side, there seems to be no effort to want to resolve the problem. Should I move this back? Yes, Sam.
Something out of everything.
Yes.
Can't we get this through email, the presentation?
Sorry, can't you?
Email the presentation to us.
We will chat to Loba afterwards about some notes. We have got some notes that we can share on all of this. So yeah, okay. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so just to recap, bullying is, and these are the three key things. Bullying is somebody intentionally hurts you. It's over and over, in other words, repeated, and they have more power, or there is an imbalance of power. Okay, we use this little acronym RIP, which most of you will remember, think of something else, but repeated intentional power. So that's the little acronym we use to remember those keywords. We touched a little bit earlier about cyberbullying. Somebody brought it up there. And I think really what this is a new way of committing an old crime. Sadly, that's what's happened with it. Okay? And at the moment, there is not currently any specific legislation governing this, but I believe that it is being worked on. So bullying is essentially, it's about power and it's about status. Okay? And as we discussed, it's definitely distinct from normal conflict. So the biggest problem is that the power in the eyes of the bully is often seen as status, sadly. And this is obviously a very, very unhealthy misconception which needs to be communicated and hopefully eventually changed. So let's just have a look at a couple of examples here. Bullying, it can happen in the real world, it can happen online, as we said. It can be anything like name-calling, hitting, pushing, physically hurting, threatening or intimidating another, taking or damaging belongings. This is also classed as bullying. Stealing lunchboxes and hiding them somewhere, taking people's bags and putting them out of sight. Gossiping or spreading rumors. That generally tends to be the girls that do that, more than the boys. We'll discuss that a little bit more just now. Mocking, taunting, making offensive comments. Purposeful exclusion is also seen as bullying, where somebody is ostracized out of a group. That can be emotionally devastating for some children. And then, so just a couple of differences between girls as bullies and boys as bullies. Girls tend to, as I mentioned, they tend to be the gossipers who're spreading rumors. Girls tend to be the ones that it's deliberate isolation, sending terrible text messages and often anonymous, as was mentioned earlier, name calling. And often what happens with girls is that the motivation behind the bullying is about jealousy. And it often happens that it's about ex-friends, for want of a better expression. So I think the fundamental difference, well, let's just have a look at the boys stuff first. Okay, so boys as bullies. There we go. So they will often pick on the quieter boys. Okay, the boys who they perceive will not be good at standing up to them. All right, so the weaker boys, and it's not necessarily a physical weakness, it could be a personality, a more reserved personality. They're definitely more physical than the girls, although I have to say, I have heard some stories on some pretty physical issues with girls, but generally the pattern tends to be that the boys tend to be more physical, with more hurtful jokes, mocking and taunting, laughing. So typically the boys' style of bullying is very much more observable, it's very much more seen, whereas the girls' style of bullying tends to be a little bit under the wraps. It's kind of around the back door and behind backs and that kind of thing. Does that ring true for most of you in your environments? Does that sound, yeah. Okay. And if we were to look at the characteristics, the general characteristics of what kind of kids are being bullied, in other words, the victims, again, for want of a better word, but yes. So, kids who are overweight, or kids who are underweight, or anything that's different about their looks, anything that's unusual about their looks, all right? Kids can be bullied because they're popular. Kids can be bullied if they're hard workers or if they're high achievers with good academic results. They can be bullied for being a different religion, different culture, different color. Okay? They can be bullied about their family. Maybe their parents are divorced. Maybe they don't have a mom. Maybe they don't have a dad. Maybe they don't have either. Okay? They can be bullied if they struggle academically, if they have a disability, if they wear glasses, hair color. So the list is endless. So if we have a look at this and we actually think about it, anybody can be bullied. And I think the point is that if a bully really wants to, they will find any reason that they can to pick on someone and to bully that person. Why is it so prevalent and why is it on the increase? Okay. I think we live in a very different world today compared to what the world looked like 20, 25 years ago. And in this post-apartheid democratic society, I think our youth are faced with very different challenges compared to the challenges that some of us in this room may have faced growing up. There's technology, there's life's fast pace, there's widespread poverty, there's domestic violence, there's criminal violence, there's the high rate at which families are breaking up. And all of these things are really just the tip of the iceberg. Then there are things like peer pressure. I mean, peer pressure at the moment is enormous, especially amongst the teenage youth. And sadly, that's getting younger and younger. Abuse of alcohol, abuse of drugs, sexual activity, all of those things are happening at younger and younger ages. It's really scary. Pornography, children are being exposed to pornography at frighteningly young ages. And sometimes it's a deliberate exposure by somebody else, and sometimes it's happened upon by accident because there isn't enough supervision when it comes to online things and finding things on the internet and that kind of thing. I think gangsterism, community violence, all that kind of stuff is prevalent. And also, and I think this is underestimated, is how many households are headed by older children. And that's a very real factor as well. And then also the lack of support. And I'm going to say this in two ways. The lack of support or the perceived lack of support. Which is why I mentioned earlier how important it is to create that safe space and let it be known to all of them that there is that safe space and this is who you can speak to or this is who you can speak to. You know, a few options so that they go to who they're most comfortable with. So, yeah, the result of all of these things is that a large majority of the youth in our society are traumatized to some degree, and many of them are definitely struggling to cope with the challenges that they're faced with. And we're seeing things like decreased academic performance, we're seeing increased school dropouts, we're seeing more and more children having to go onto medication, whether it's antidepressants or sleeping tablets or anti-anxiety things. We're seeing extremely concerning antisocial behavior. I mean, bullying is just one of them. It's obviously one of the most obvious ones at the moment. But increasing incidences of depression. And interestingly, depression is the fastest growing mental health disorder in South Africa, and specifically between the ages of 14 and 18. It's very scary. I had a chat with a pharmacist not so long ago, and she said to me that, I forget the exact percentage, but it was something really high. Like the average percentage of high school students on antidepressants was about 75%. And I remember just feeling completely astounded, thinking, whoa, you know, that shouldn't be the norm. And yet sadly it is. So interestingly, and as I mentioned this earlier, bullies and victims actually mirror each other. And what do I mean by that? Is that most often they are both traumatized, they're both marginalized somewhere in their own lives, and in some respect they both feel powerless. Where they differ, however, is in their response to these feelings. Okay? So some will withdraw and become more reserved and go into a depression and become perfect victims for the bullies that are out there. And then others will act out in attempts to have more power and show that power over the victims and bully the victims. So yeah, and just one of the stats, or what the research is showing, is that bullied and depressed teenagers are the ones that are most likely to take their own lives. And we're seeing so much of it. I saw this morning, I think, I'm not sure if it happened this morning, but I read it this morning on News 24. There was a girl in Pretoria. Did you see that? Yeah. So it's happening all the time, and it's very scary. Anyway, so as I said earlier, this bullies want to be heard. Everyone wants to be heard. But bullies, it's not only the victims that need the help, obviously, it's the bullies that need the help too. We need to give them a platform where they can share so that we understand why they are doing it and let them voice what it is that they are feeling. Because very often, bullies are bullies because they are seeing that behavior somewhere else in their lives. So they're often being abused themselves, they're often being bullied by elders themselves. So then the natural thing to do is that they adopt that behavior. Like I was saying earlier, children don't learn so much by what we teach them, but by watching what we do, and that's sadly what's happening as well. So they're modeling or adopting behavior from their own environments. They feel very isolated, and often come from socially compromised backgrounds where they haven't been taught the social skills, the communication skills, and the life skills to deal with what they're feeling inside and what they're going through. They often struggle with relationships, and so they want to feel strong and they want to exert their power. They often have low self-esteem, and this is a very common misconception, is that people often, or children often think that bullies have a very strong self-esteem, where in actual fact it's the opposite. It's like a cover, it's like a front to try and patch up for the fact that they actually are feeling inadequate inside. So yeah, low self-esteem and low self-worth, and they are typically very good manipulators. Also, I think, learned behavior. So, bottom line, bullying is absolutely not okay. Everyone in this room agrees with that, I know. And I think, a couple of you mentioned earlier about bullying seems to be like a norm, or the children seem to think it's a norm, and that it happens so often and so regularly that that's just what they think, that's how they think it's supposed to be. And the problem with this is that if they're engaging in that bullying so often, they are entrenching that negative behavior, which obviously can have disastrous long-term effects, because they don't learn the life skills of conflict management. They don't learn the skills of self-control and managing self and self-awareness and all of those vital skills that creates a platform and a basis for many other successes that need to happen on top of that. Yeah, also acceptance, accepting people for who they are and their differences. So bullying and intimidation, as I mentioned earlier, obviously can leave scars and for a very long time. And some of the things, it can result in poor academic achievement, mental and emotional and physical health going downhill, and a variety of other negative social consequences. So, and I mentioned earlier about it being the leading cause of depression and suicide. So the impact and the effects are long-term, and it absolutely cannot be tolerated. I feel there should be zero tolerance. I think the difficulty comes in with the consistency part. How do you feel about that? Difficulty keeping the consistency, especially when you've got a lot of children in your class. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the trauma of bullying, victims land up feeling afraid, degraded, worthless, so it definitely has an enormous impact on their self-esteem. They start to doubt themselves and question themselves and turn it back on themselves. It's my fault that I'm being bullied. What's wrong with me that I'm being bullied? Okay? They obviously experience deep levels of misery and unhappiness in their lives, and they will start to withdraw, or often start to withdraw from life and socially isolate themselves. Excuse me. And often what happens is the normal day-to-day stuff that they would normally have been good at starts becoming more and more difficult. They start developing issues with trust, self-esteem again. self-belief, and this obviously results in a lot of self-harm and can eventually lead to depression and suicide. Some of the other effects. Some of the other effects is that they feel shame. There's a brilliant book, if any of you can get hold of it, Brené Brown, and it's called Daring Greatly, and she talks in depth about shame and vulnerability. It's a very, very good read. I can't expand too much on that now, but a very good read if you can get hold of it. They start avoiding schools or any places where they feel like they're being bullied. They may show symptoms of anxiety. Their sleep patterns may be disturbed, and you wouldn't necessarily as educators see this on a nightly basis, but you would probably notice in class every day that they're feeling tired and looking tired. Things like changes in eating patterns, weight gain, weight loss, and bedwetting. Complaining of psychosomatic things, headaches, tummy aches, growing pains, all those kinds of things. So if we can be in tune and be aware of noticing when any of these types of changes are happening within the children, perhaps it would give us a heads up in terms of maybe starting to facilitate a discussion around, is everything okay, and how are you feeling, and how's everything at home, kind of thing. Okay, so one of the most powerful things that I think has worked is turning bullying on its head. So whilst we do want to make awareness around what bullying is and what it means and how it makes other people feel and all that stuff, I think there needs to be just as much, if not more, focus on turning it the other way around in terms of what does it mean to build good relationships? What does it mean to be a good leader? What kind of qualities does a good leader have in terms of building people up instead of breaking people down? So what does it mean to be kind? And for the littler ones, give us examples of what it means to be kind. How are you going to show kindness or speak kindness from your heart? What does it mean to be a good friend? What does it mean to be an upstander? And when I say upstander, who am I referring to generally? When I say an upstander, is the bystanders, okay? To obviously not bully, rather be a buddy than be a bully, okay? And that they know to ask for help. So I think there's a great amount of power in focusing more on what we want and encouraging more of what we want and focusing too much on what the problem is at hand. So by doing that, we create a shift in perception in the children and shift it to, what does it mean to be a good person in the society rather than somebody who's creating harm and pain in somebody else. Okay, thanks. All right, so in terms of what can we do in our schools, all of us in the room here, we have to be introducing anti-bullying policies and campaigns and projects focused around that. I know a lot of schools in the past we've been into where we've actually had poster competitions where the kids have been in small groups or individuals if they want to, creating posters about building relationships and being good friends, and then there's a competition at the end, for the best three with a really a nice prize that they feel motivated to want to achieve. So those campaigns are really important. They're absolutely vital. Okay. Again, sorry, as I mentioned earlier, just informing them, creating that safe space, that platform where they can go and making it known where it is, and that they can confide in you. If a student approaches you, however small the issue may seem, we have to always take it seriously. And we have to hear them out and really get a feeling for what it is they're experiencing and what they're feeling. And I think also here what's so important is to allow them to understand that by sharing those things is not a sign of weakness. I think so many children, even adults, we think it's a weakness if we have to ask for help. And it's such a huge misperception because, if we're all human beings, and as far as I can see, we all look like human beings in this room, we need that. That's why we're here. We're here for each other. We weren't created to live in isolation. What would happen if we put one of us on an island all by ourselves with absolutely nobody else near us? We'd probably go mad, because we need human interaction. So it must be communicated to them that it's a sign of strength to come forward and ask for help when we feel we need it. I teach a lot of the older children, not so much the littler ones, but the older children, about finding your internal barometer. And what I mean by that is getting a sense of where you're at in terms of your feelings and monitoring where you're at. So, we all have down days, we all have good days and bad days, and that's pretty normal, and that's part of being human and part of life. But the barometer being the thing that measures how long am I feeling down like this for? Is it a day or two, or even maybe a week, and then I'm feeling a bit better? Or is it really dragging out, and is it 1 week after the next, and it's going into 1 month after the next? And to teach them to tune into that barometer so that they know where they're at and they realize when it's time to ask for help. And yes, as I said, that it's a strength. It's a strength to come forward and ask for help and not to be seen as a weakness. And encouraging students to be upstanders. This is something else that I do with the kids as well. Oh, do I? Sorry, Robin. There you go. And I get them, so in any bullying situation, there are always 3 parties involved in a bullying situation. Can anyone tell me what those 3 parties are? Who are the 3 parties involved? Yes? Okay, so we've got the victim. We've got the bystanders. And who else? We've got the big bully, okay? So I always ask the kids, who has the most power in this triangle of interaction? And typically what they answer, especially the younger ones, is what? The bully. They all think that the bully has the most power. And then I turn it around for them and I say, okay, and I pull 2 of them up here and I say, let's just imagine, and I know that you're not a bully, Jack, but just for this role play, Jack, you're going to be the bully, and I pull up someone else and I say, Tom, you're going to be the victim. And then I say to them, okay, so Jack's the bully and Tom's the victim. And I say, who's the bully? And they all go, Jack. And I say, who's the victim? And they all go, Tom. And I said, and who are all of you? And they all look at me. And I don't really know how to answer that. But then, the discussion leads to, okay, and then I get them to look at each other, and I get them to try and count how many in the room. I say, how many of you are there? And how many Jacks are there? And how many Toms are there? So, who's got the most power? And then, of course, they all go, the bystanders. Okay, and it's quite an epiphany, and they all suddenly think, wow, okay, we all stand together. How's that song go? We all stand together. And essentially, yes, that's what it is. So it's again, changing their perception of who has the power and who hasn't, and getting them to realize that by standing together, they are so much more powerful. And so what was I saying? We were talking about being upstanders, upstanders, and defending those being bullied, and then obviously to take action. Okay. All right. Thank you, Luba. Next slide there. So, okay, this was just a slide about who has the most power. So, and also just to add to that is helping them to understand that if they're going to jump on the bandwagon, that they don't jump on the bandwagon of the bully, that they jump on the bandwagon with the bystanders. Okay. I think all in all, our society does not create a safe developmental container. All right. Many homes are not able to do so. They don't have the resources or the skills to do so. And like I said, if we consider the children spend most of their developmental years in a school environment, our schools are the ones who have the possibility of being at the very center of this community and having the power to make the biggest difference. That's so that our children can create, can fulfill their full potential as active citizens. So by taking action against bullying, we'll be creating happy and safe schools, that's our aim obviously, where children can truly grow and learn to develop. And obviously your time, all of your time and your commitment is an invaluable investment into our society. And there are a couple of websites up here for your interest if you would like to have a look at any of those with some more help and some more guidance. And are there any comments or any questions about anything that we've discussed or any experiences that you might want to share? Not really. Anybody got some experience? Yes, yes?
From my Partridge Fairways Primary, I think we as educators also need to look at our roles. And I think the honesty in it is that sometimes we are the bully.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we are teaching children that it's okay to bully, just in the manner in which we discipline a child.
100%.
So if we discipline a child in a punitive manner, that we empower ourselves over that child, we are giving the child over there the power to take power away from another child. And I think we are forgetting that key factor in our fight against bullying. I can't tell a child not to be a bully if I'm bullying a child.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. And it comes back to what I said about children don't learn so much about what we teach them. They learn from modeling what they see us do. And that's absolutely right. It has to first start here. And it's not easy to have that introspection and that reflection on ourselves. It's difficult to find fault in ourselves as human beings. And it's very much a strength for us to really dig deep and find those faults within ourselves and really evaluate ourselves and how we are in life and what behavior would be worth modeling and what behavior do we think is not worth modeling, and in that to grow and change ourselves to become better people as well. You know, I always say that we think as parents and teachers that we put here to educate our children, but on so many levels I think they are here to teach us about so many things, about life, about love, about so much. So is there anybody else who would like to share anything, ask anything? Does anyone? Yes.
Recently in an incident where a child had passed away because of bullying, because he was forced to take some drugs, and then he went to PE and he collapsed on the field and then he had died. And I think it's so important from sitting here to know that I don't think our children do know that they should be speaking out. I think they are accepting it a lot more because there were definitely children around who saw what was happening. And the child who was forced to take this drugs, he just carried on. He didn't speak to anyone, he didn't go to the office, he went for PE, he collapsed and he died. So it's really important for our children to know. And this wasn't even a child who takes drugs, it was a child who was forced.
Yeah. And that's not a story in isolation. Sadly, those kinds of stories are very common. And just to add to that is that's also why the self-esteem, the self-worth side of things is so absolutely vital. And through Live Talk, we do a lot of those self-esteem building workshops and things as well on teaching adults and children how to build your own self-esteem and how to facilitate the growth of that in the children and the young adults that we come into contact with. It's vital, and I think it's a more important skill. Those soft life skills of self-esteem and tools to, for example, tools to manage conflict and building good relationships, in my mind, those are far more important than academic skills. You know, that's like, those life skills and soft skills are like the fertile soil from which the academic stuff and all the other stuff grows. If we've got that in place nicely and in a healthy way to begin with, everything else can blossom out from that, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for your attention. Thank you so much for being here today.